Hello, hello.
I would say that your mic is working.
Nice.
Yo,
Hey,
Yep, I can hear everyone. We can just wait like a few minutes just to let the stage fill up for a bit. But yeah, we've got a full house today, huh? It's not. We don't normally have like 4 people on stage for the AMA, so that'd be exciting. Yep, and also this is gonna be it's being recorded as well, so that is great. Big shout out to Tonin. Also, I think we can get started today, and I'm sure more people are gonna start rolling in. Awesome. So yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join the AMA today, as we are joined by Chris Clay, Josiah, and special guest Andrew Friday, who is the executive producer of blockchain gaming at Mindloader. So at this point, the community is quite familiar with Clay and Josiah, but this is the first real taste that GOG community has really gotten from a Mindloader representative. For those who may not know you, Andrew, can you please give us an introduction of your background and maybe Web3 gaming, or just your career in general and experience at Mineloader?
yeah, so I've been in the gaming industry for over a decade now. I actually started my career in China, working in Beijing at a Chinese gaming company called Su or Happy Elements. And then, I did a startup, and that kind of got me into at the SF tech scene. So I moved here, worked at Glue Mobile, again with the Beijing studio though, and so worked on like some RPG games there, Eternity Warriors 3 and 4, if anybody's like OG mobile dungeon crawler fan. Worked on that, and then worked on the Kim Kardashian game briefly, brought subscriptions to that. And then I went over to Zynga, was there for a few years, worked on a whole bunch of different games, including Zynga Poker and Words with Friends. And then spent the last 4 years building a Web3 gaming company. And so I worked on Viworlds. You can see my PFP there. And so that was one of the first actual like working games not made by Immutable that was launched on the Immutable L2. And so after doing that, I've actually worked with Mindloader as a client. I first met them at Zynga, where they helped us work on a handful of different games. And then at Knock Knock, they helped us a little bit with a few projects, including Viworlds. And so after I sadly had to shut down Knock Knock, I started, talking to people and, ended up working with Mindloader on this project.
Awesome. Thanks for that introduction, Andrew. Sorry, just trying to unmute
Oh,
myself.
and sorry, can I? And sorry, just real quick. Also, just on Mindloader, I feel like I should, introduce them a little bit.
course.
They've been around for 20 years now. They're having their 20-year anniversary. And like I said, I've known them for 5 or 6 years, so I've known them for a long time. They've done a whole bunch of different projects. I mean, it would take forever to name them all, but like, they did like Last of Us, Final Fantasy VII, the remake. They did the Final Fantasy, I think it was 12. They did that for a number of years. They also did co-development on Metroid Prime. It was with on the Nintendo Switch, and so they developed about half of that game was made by them. And let's see what else. I mean, like I said, they've worked on a ton of different games, including the ones I just mentioned. They've been around for a long time, and I've worked with them and been quite happy with like how they take a long term perspective. Being around for 20 years in gaming, especially in China, it's like kind of a testament that they don't cut corners. They really think long term.
Yeah, I think it's a very cutthroat industry, right? And especially in China, I think lasting 20 years is a great testament to, the actual quality that they produce. And also, I actually didn't know that they actually, helped with Metroid Prime, because I think that was one of my favorite games, actually. Along with Final Fantasy and The Last of Us. I didn't actually play those, although I know there's like major titles. But yeah, just shows you just the amount of the range of games that they've actually contributed to. So
Well, and I think it's always tricky too. Having been in games now myself for almost 23 years, keeping that core team together, and the fact that that core team at Mindloader among the leadership has been together for a long time provides that vein of consistency throughout in what they do, and it's one of the things that's made him just so fun to work with because they have an ease with working with each other that just lets them move very quickly.
Yeah, and one other thing, maybe this was a preemptive, or this was a question on the list, but just since we're talking about Mindloader and their history, they've been working on this particular genre for a while, and so they released a handful of games for either themselves or for clients, including like Ace Kingdom, Age of Avatars, Battle of Phoenicia, and Ace Kingdom, for example, was a top 20 bestseller in Taiwan, and Battle of Phoenicia, I think that's the English version, but it was also released in Japan under a different name for a publisher. Because again, they do a lot of work like with this, that it'll be published by IMX, but it was actually made by Mindloader and them kind of partnered, and so they've been doing that sort of co-development for quite a while, specifically in this genre.
Yeah, I think one of the main strengths of Mindloader is the fact that they actually have a lot of experience in this particular genre, and I think that's a major reason of why we ended up going down this path. And I'm sure that we'll get to see that as we get more and more progress leaks as time goes on. But yeah, thanks for that, Andrew. I think that's a great introduction to yourself and also Mindloader. So I guess we can start tackling right into the community questions. So the first one is from Mythic. It's a bit of a long question that needs some context, so I'm actually going to just post a screenshot in the GOG stage chat channel. So he's asking, I'd assume founders and limited heroes should start at 14 stars so you can grind the rest through playing the game. Even if they start at 12 to 13 stars, we would still need 64 copies of a founder hero to max star it. I don't see you creating a system where it's impossible to reach max stars, quoting Mythic there. So his question is, so starting at 14 stars makes sense. Is founders and other limited heroes starting at 14 stars look like what you have in mind? So I think Clay, if you want to kick things off to tackle this question. And
Yeah,
just for, so since there's like Clay, Josiah, and Andrew on stage today as well. So I'll just open the floor. If anyone wants to contribute to a question, definitely feel free to jump in. But yeah, other than that, Clay, go ahead.
So yeah, at a high level, I think it's important to talk about the outcome we want, which is for people with founders NFTs to be able to get them to 15 star, because that's obviously a key goal in unlocking the maximum potential for Guardian. And we want that to be a reasonable process. The math here isn't correct, though. So, as the example they gave, needing to go from, they had in their question, 64 copies to go from 12 to 15 stars. That's not the math that we have. In the system as it's designed, if you're going from 12 to 15, we would expect 2 duplicate heroes to be needed. Guardians could be input into the system. It's not that for every input, it's always a duplicate Guardian. And I think that might be the confusing point. But they won't start at 14 stars.
Faction. Sorry.
Yeah, but they will start at a star value that gives a reasonable path to get to 15 stars. And that isn't something that is uniform across all of the different founder NFTs, because there are different numbers that have been minted for each. So it may be variable as well, but we're working on that math and that path for players ahead. The other question they had in there was, will merging impact the cosmetic rarity? And there are no plans for that at this time.
Awesome. Thanks for that insight, Clay and Andrew. Hopefully that clears it up. So the next question is a rather simple one. So Q3 roadmap is limited beta and NFT integration. For the people who get access to limited beta, will our NFTs and progress roll over into live beta since we're using our NFTs?
So yeah, this is where things get tricky because everyone talks a little bit different about like, is this one limited beta? Is this beta? Is this open beta? Is this alpha? Is this pre-alpha? Is this friends and family? General rule to test if it will impact and carry forward is if the test is happening on mainnet, then yes, the things that you're minting through play will stay. If it's on testnet during a release, then no, they will not impact, and that progress will not carry forward. So look to the platform that the beta test is being run on.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of different terminologies when it comes to like alphas and betas, and I'm glad that in the medium we actually kind of highlighted what each phase actually entails, because depending on the game and project, it actually can be quite different, right? So the next question, since we own our assets and spend a lot of resources, time, and other NFTs, in brackets money, to upgrade our NFTs, do all of the levels and upgrades transfer when we sell our assets? And I think, Andrew, you might have a solid response to this question.
Yeah, so when you combined heroes, that'll like increase their star level, right? So when you then take that hero and sell it, the star level will transfer. So if you've put a lot of resources into that, it'll transfer to the new person. But when the person purchases it, the level will be reset. But on top of that, you'll get back a significant portion of the XP gold, the XP and gold that you put in. So you put in XP gold and time, and you get a significant portion of that back. And you also get a new resource called Dust, which can be used for a different system. And we're doing this because it's important for players to earn the progression that they get through play, and not that it's like pay to win. You can just buy what you want. And so we want people to experience and play the game with all the new characters and kind of again unlock their story, and kind of the lore as you journey with them.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Andrew. And Claire, did you have anything to add on that question as well? Or has Andrew got it covered?
I mean, Andrew has it largely covered. The color I would add there in terms of outcomes is, my experience when it comes to RPGs and games in general, you do want to ensure that players earn progression through play, and that progression is preserved and not destroyed. But it's really tricky when players can just straight up buy progression and skip a lot of the content. And my opinion there as a designer is that is more destructive than constructive to the overall environment. So that's part of why we've arrived at this system where a lot of the potential is unlocked and tradable, but the actual progression itself is something that the player has to work for and earn within their account.
Awesome. Thanks for adding some color into that. And just a heads up, guys, if you guys think there's any issues in terms of audio, just let us know in the chat as well. We do have a bit more people today, so it might be a bit funky, so please bear with us. So the next few questions is regarding to guilds. Part of the biggest value for guilds was that the only crafting in the game was sourced through guilds. This is a big part of what gave guilds their value. How do you plan to retain value for these guilds?
Yeah, so this is a tricky question. And it's a delicate one because it's something that we're still working on, because it is an important one for us to answer within the new world and system. So at its most basic, when it comes to equipment, it is sticking to that original goal of any NFT equipment that is craftable being craftable by guilds. And then the next stage of it is how we integrate guilds into the wider new economy. So we do want to ensure that guilds play a key part, and that people who join guilds can work together to basically supercharge their participation in the overall Web3 economy. But some of the exact details here are going to come down to how the modeling of the economy plays out as we get more of it in place and we're able to simulate what this is going to do long term, because we want to ensure that long-term stability. And we want to see how in simulation this interaction of people who are in guilds with those out of guilds works on the overall flow as you're looking at people getting into the game from D1 all the way to D90. Things we do know that there will be guilds at launch and guild leaderboards, which members of guilds can participate to earn exclusive rewards. Where it gets more tricky and where we're looking at the play space available is things like advanced crafting materials that all players will need to craft equipment for their guardians. There's a lot of potential in that space, and I don't know exactly the best way to execute it just yet, but we will in the not too distant future. And what I mean there is when it comes to advanced crafting materials and you're looking at guilds, there are ways we can make guilds a key part of that ecosystem. The most sort of blunt force trauma approach to that is to say that here are these high tier crafting materials that only guilds can produce. I have concerns about that approach. When it is sort of that blunt force approach, it can create rifts in the community between those who can access guilds, and as we've acknowledged, there's a limited number of those overall with those who can't. My bent at the moment that we're going to look at exploring is guilds being able to more efficiently craft some of those materials, so less inputs overall to get there. So working together, guilds can get easier access to materials, and people in the wider community still incentivized to buy those from guilds themselves. There are more places that we can hook in, but we're going to have to do a little bit more modeling and investigation on our end to be able to speak with full confidence that this is how it's going to play out. So at that point, it's like ask for patience and make it an open dialogue. If you've got really interesting ideas for how this could work, it's something that we're absolutely willing to take feedback on and look at integrating.
Yeah,
any other color people want to add in?
Yeah, that investigation is definitely happening as well. Like the economy team actually recently pitched an idea that is in its very early stages right now, so we won't go into too many details, but like ultimately what matters most is that guilds are producing something that is absolutely necessary or needed or valued by the rest of the player base at large, like equipment would have been if the guilds were the sole producer of it in the past. So like it's all about the economy team and the game design team finding, okay, if we want to diversify guild or equipment crafting and make it something that everybody can do, and what else is there for us to use? And thankfully, there's a ton of stuff for us to use, and it could be something as simple as like consumables that you need to level up that are only crafted through guilds, all the way to guild improvements that are necessary to continue crafting, like keys to enter dungeons or something like that. Like the possibilities are endless, and we have a lot of different areas we can explore and make sure that value is maintained, if not improved, over time.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Josiah and Clay. And I think the next question is a follow-up on guilds. And it reads, as you've mentioned that guilds are a part of the game, but not currently available for a large player base, could you please share more about your future plans for expanding guild availability and functionality? If you want to take this one, Clay.
Yeah, at the top level, we're focused on making guilds work as they exist today, within the rules and confines of the systems as they were laid out. The limited number of guild members is absolutely a concern, but it's also an opportunity for us to learn through guilds working in this microcosm, how we can potentially expand that out and include more people in the mix. But this is the nature of Web3. That's going to be something that has to be in consultation, negotiation with the holders of those tokens as we look at those systems, because it's a big deal. I would not feel comfortable, for instance, making a unilateral decision to just say, yes, there are more guilds in the mix. Is there opportunities? Yeah, I think there are constructive ways to allow guild founders to expand the functionality of their guild tokens to others, but those systems aren't to be done lightly. So when it comes to plans on expanding guild functionality right now, it is in the mental matrix, but it is not written in stone on how that's going to function. And some of that is just how we're tackling problems. It is addressing those directly before us, before we expand the problem space to these additional things that we know we want to get to, but don't stand in the way of getting to launch. And I think I've said it before, and I'll say it again, keeping us on a path to launch and getting the most important elements in that launch are the goal. And as these additional things come in, they're on the roadmap, for 2024 and beyond, but not having them be blockers to getting to that initial launch.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Clay. So the next question is regarding the storyline and / challenges people expect. Let me just pop into the chat. So it reads, for players who reach the highest levels or complete the main storyline, what kind of in-game content or challenges can they expect? I think, Andrew, you have a solid insight into this.
Yep. Yeah, so this is something that I've been working on with the designer. It's pretty exciting. So the way it currently works is there's two kind of dungeon types. There's like story dungeons where you're playing through like the main quest. There's a map and you can see the story kind of unfold over those dungeons. And then there's endless mode. And so endless mode is more of a true roguelike. You start at the beginning and you're just going to play until you die, until your whole team has been knocked out. And what's cool about this is then this will basically unlock a leaderboard function where players, based off of how far they get and how high of a score that they earn through their run this week, they will then get a place on the leaderboard. And so the leaderboards is, from an economy side, where most of the gems that will be distributed back to the community, this is where most of it will happen. And so this is like an end game system. And because, again, it's unlimited, then you're going to be able to like go as deep as you can and place on a leaderboard and then earn gems from the community pool. And this will be, some of the things that are exciting about it is it's going to be, the kind of live ops event where it'll be refreshed regularly with like different difficulties, different meta in terms of like who the enemies are. And so this will like be the end game, mode. I think initially that the current design is that it will unlock upon the completion of World 1, though, again, as we develop, maybe it'll unlock a little later, but that's currently where it is. So it's something where, it's not just like end game, I beat the game and now I do it, but it's something where once you've gone, a couple hours in, then you'll get access to it. And so it's one of the two main modes that you'll be able to play.
Yeah, that's super exciting. I think originally when I think we mentioned in the last AMA that we were actually going to have like an endless mode. I think a lot of people were quite excited because it's a common question, right? Once you finish all the in-game content for a game, it's like, what is there left to do? So I think the fact that we're endless mode, that's not only going to have rewards and everything, it's going to be constantly updated during live ops. So I think that's something that people are going to definitely look forward to. So the next,
it is one of the things that I'm most excited about on the endless mode is the possibility for mutations on the mode itself that completely change the experience, and being able to experiment, with the leaderboards themselves. That's most basic. It's how deep can you go? Like how many nodes in the dungeon can you traverse? But there's other potential there for how much gold can you acquire on a run? How many resources? Total damage done? Can you do it with just a limited pool of guardians? So those mutations, I think, are where there's even more space to keep things interesting and provide the players with new challenges to solve.
Yeah, and one other thing on that I forgot to mention is, as you get deeper into the endless mode, there will be, again, part of the meta refresh is there'll be certain times where specific, very rare resources will be in endless mode, but they'll be like at the deeper stages. So, if you can get far along in the meta, then you could, make it past and get like these more rare resources as part of like the end game.
Awesome. I think there's like a bunch of variables there that the game design team and the live ops team can actually tweak, and it'll really change the experience that people feel when playing that mode. So that's going to be very exciting. So the next question is regarding to Guild of Guardians PFPs. So definitely something our OGs like. So the question is, can we use Guild of Guardians PFP NFTs as in-game icons as another way to represent ourselves and give value to an OG community NFT? Will there be any other utility other than being a cool PFP? Any thoughts?
Yeah, from my end, the PFPs were a holiday gift to the community, without specific utility in mind. When I talk about the current goal of delivering on existing, TLD commitments and getting to launch, this is one of those things that I would say is plausible in post-launch sort of updates and releases, but not currently planned for the NPV. Though I agree, it would be cool.
Make what would be the most bang for a buck for everyone, right? But yeah, like you said, Clay, it would be cool. So the next question is, will there still be guild raids? Could you explain how raiding will work? Will there be any level or progress requirements for players to participate, or can everyone join in? Also, what kind of rewards can players expect from raids?
So this is one of the systems that I expect to come online in the post-launch release and development plan. So when it comes to all of these details, we are not focused on fleshing those out at the moment. But guild raids is something that, ever since I joined the project, I've wanted to bring into the mix. So as we get through some of these core systems throughout 2023 and start shifting our focus to, the live operations release plan, I would be happy to dive more into this. We've obviously got a lot of things cooking in the kitchen, both from before the reboot and after. But this isn't one where I could give exact details at this point in time. I don't know, Josiah, if you want to add anything to that.
I mean, yeah, guild raids in its original form was meant to be like the way players got the recipes so they could craft the equipment in guilds. And of course, with the whole economy shifting and the whole game modes shifting, like we had to find new ways and we have to look at our existing features, look and see, did they still serve the purpose that they originally were supposed to serve? Like, when we look at our design goals and the design intensive, and what are the problem statements that each one of these features is supposed to solve? Which of these features are they still checking those boxes? Like, are they actually adding value to this experience, or are they just kind of legacy features that are here for the sake of being there? And as Clay has mentioned a couple of times already, like, our commitment is making sure that we get something out this year to players, MVP wise. So, yeah, like guild raids, not on the table right now. We definitely love it. We want to go back to it. It has a lot of design already put into it, so we would have a really good head start on that end. But yeah, like it's not on our plate for current development and design.
Yeah, I think to echo that, yeah, it's not currently a focus, but I'm very excited about that. I think there's a lot of cool stuff we can do with this feature, and I know there's been some good design work in there, and I think a lot of it can be used. And I think the team is I was talking with them about this kind of recently in WeChat, and it's definitely on our radar, but it's not in there quite yet. But it's super exciting.
Yeah, I think it's quite important at the end of the day to also drive home the fact that the MVP release of the game, after whatever we release at the end of the year, it's not going to be like that's it, right? There's always going to be live ops to add more things. I think Clay's going to touch on it later, but there's also so many other things past 2023 in the pipelines. So although not everything that we kind of want to integrate into the game is going to be ready by then, I think the most important thing is that the team is planning beyond that, right? It's not just going to be, hey, we're just going to release something at the end of the year and then it's going to be the Wild West from there. There's actually like a plan that's going towards everything. And if you look at many other games and how they started, it was definitely a while away from where they are currently. So thanks for that, guys. So the next question is regards to pets. What is the idea for pets roles in Guild of Guardians? If the game reaches millions, there will be a want for more pets. What are your thoughts on breeding for future pets? And I think Josiah, you're probably the most suited to answer this one.
All right. Yes, pets. So the future of pets. We've talked about this a number of times. Like all the things we wanted to do. We wanted to have them join Guardians in the dungeon, fight alongside, do other things beside kind of the passive buffs that they currently provide. And all that stuff is still on the table. Like, that's all things that everybody who's taken a look at pets and all the various forms of the game has taken place in all agree that they want to explore at some point. But for its current form, we're not going to change anything about the way pets work right now for the MVP release. They're still going to provide the bonuses that they provided when they were sold to you.
Awesome. Thanks for that concise answer. So the next question is, this new gameplay looks like it's much easier to incorporate PvP. This is a thing in other similar style games like AFK Arena. Will we have PvP, not PFP, and bracket style tournaments in this new version of GOG? Clay or Andrew, if you guys wanted to add to this one.
Yeah, I mean, player competition comes through in many forms. Key form of competition at launch is going to be leaderboards in the Endless Dungeon. Getting to the point where we can have either two squads of Guardians go up against each other in PvP, I think, as rightfully pointed out, is not a far stretch. This is definitely high up the list for post-launch addition into the game, because it just makes sense. And again, gives another ladder for players to climb in competition. But this is like AFK style tournaments for PvP are not in the MVP at the moment.
Just to reiterate, those tournaments sound super awesome. I think I really enjoy that, and we know a ton about AFK and have been playing that for years. So that's definitely interesting. And one thing also to add, another feature that's in the pipeline for the future is the idea of like a PvP room. And so when you complete a given room and you're picking what's the next room I'm going to go into, there's there at some point will be an option where you can choose to like, hey, do I want to do like another regular room, or do I want to jump into a PvP room and then have like take a little bit more risk, but then get some rewards and then actually fight another player. That's something that we're excited about, and it's a little bit smaller than the tournament feature and would like fit into the existing game.
Yeah, that's super exciting. I think along with the endless mode, I think PvP is something like a lot of people kind of look forward to after all the in-game content is kind of done, and to keep things not stale and fresh, right? So that's gonna be super exciting to see how that develops. So the next question is, in other games like this, so mobile games, I guess. There's a microtransaction model for people to pay to win and buy heroes and items. Does the team plan to have this in GOG or stay away from this? Andrew, I think if you wanted to tackle this one.
Yeah, I mean it's always a balance, especially when you consider like there's an open marketplace. So we can't really stop people from buying the best NFT if they want to. But again, because when you sell an NFT, you get the stars and you get like the rarity and all that, but you do reset the level, and then the seller gets refunded some of the XP and gold that they invested and the dust. Um, the players are still going to have to they're going to go through and play with their characters to level them up. So we're definitely trying to balance it, but again, because like there's an open marketplace, there's if you want to spend thousands of dollars, right? It's you're always going to have a bit of advantage. So it's really just a balance between having like complexity, having strategy, rewarding like it. And again, if I spend a lot of time on it, I'm going to get XP. I'm going to be able to grind and level up. So we're just trying to balance it, as well as we can.
Awesome. Sorry, I was trying to get the unmute button there. Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's always about balancing and keeping that fine line. I think it's also important to note like the design of mobile games is kind of inherently different compared to like a PC game. But yeah, I think the team is quite well aware of this, and yeah, we'll do our best to work on that balance. So the next question is, can you add a serial number in game so we can avoid sacrificing our lower serial NFTs when upgrading stars? A password feature for every upgrade might help.
Yes. This one's on me. So, on the serial number, when showing that in game, that's totally a possibility. We could obviously have some sort of like info button on assets that, like, when you tap it, shows you more Web3 related or relevant information, such as serial number, for example. But that also brings up a really good point, the second part of your question about, password protecting certain actions in game. And that's absolutely a thing that we're going to be investigating, and that's actually something that the IMX team on the other side of the studio, the platform side of the studio, is a big part of their focus is making sure that what they call Web3 friction points, any part of the game that would require you to make a transaction or move stuff around in your wallet or talk with somebody else, like on a back end situation. We want to make sure that you have like every chance possible to confirm the actions that are about to take place. So there's no situations. We want to minimize, if not completely eliminate, all the situations where you might accidentally burn or trade or use something that you don't want to use.
Yeah, the thing I would be clear though, this is a balance, because friction is the death of a game, and if you look at all of the friction associated with interacting with Web3 right now, adding even more friction on top, while it may solve this one particular case, is in direct opposition to mass adoption. The current sort of like crypto community, particularly in a bear market, we're all hardcore, we're used to it, we can deal with it. But when you look at your average player, friction leads to quitting. So it's a balance there. Part of my goal in working with the UX team and Passport and everything is to minimize friction as much as possible, while also ensuring that people don't make mistakes like you're alluding to. But it is a balance, and adding a ton of friction to avoid one potential scenario like this is oppositional to providing an experience that players enjoy when they're interacting with the product. So it's something that we'll have to look at. I think by default, just based off of my current knowledge of things, when we get to launch, the friction will be quite high, and it'll be very difficult to make mistakes like this. And it does, bring up an interesting question in that if you want to star up a low mint number NFT, technically you are creating a new star level of NFT. How do we look at that sort of preservation path of that history? Is that mint number is something that needs to carry through? Definitely take that back to the team and think on it.
Yeah, I think there's some good points raised here, and especially around like serial numbers and mint numbers. But yeah, I think another thing is this. Yeah, we should figure out if there's a handful of cases where we need to like this issue can happen, then we can just code in, hey, you can't do this, or hey, you're gonna like double confirm before we let you do this like weird edge case that you probably wouldn't do. And another thing is part of like a similar system to the when you sell an NFT, you get back like a refund on some of the XP and some of the gold that you've invested into that to level it up. Similarly, like when you're if you're merging something that's like super high level, there'll be some degree of refund there too, or like you'll be able to basically like at any time, like reset the hero's level to get back some of those resources, and then use that then that character as like fodder to level up or level up material, star up, sorry, material. So like we've built in a couple systems to make sure that when you are taking a hero that you've invested a lot in, you have a way to get back a good portion of what you put into it.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Andrew. And I think a quick question that I didn't actually we didn't initially have from the community, though I think you can quickly expand on, Andrew, is someone just asked, what is gold? Is that GOG token? If you wanted to explain what gold is to everyone.
Yeah. So that's not the GOG token. We call the GOG token gems, and so gold is like a soft currency that you earn and through playing the game, and you can use that to level up characters and do other things with. But it's designed as a soft currency, so it's meant to be used, burned, and it's off chain. And it's like any standard like the AFK arena style of game.
Awesome. Yeah. So just to clarify, gold is off chain and it's a soft currency in game. It is not GOG token. GOG token is gems, and that has a different purpose. Thanks for that, Andrew. So the next question is, how does Guild of Guardians balance the RPG elements and the auto battle mechanics in the game? What role will player input play during battles, and how much will pre-battle preparation matter? Josiah, I think you are the man to go for this one.
Yeah, for sure. So, this hasn't really changed a whole lot, actually. Like, even though like it's gone from like a little bit more of an action RPG to like a gotcha style hero RPG, Eastern style RPG, like the level of strategy that we expect to see from players before they go into dungeons, in terms of building their teams, in terms of managing their teams, in terms of adjusting to the tactics that individual rooms or enemies will throw up against you while you're inside those dungeons, like that stuff doesn't change. Like, elements are still there, roles are still there, you still have tanks, you still have damages, you still have healers. Just because you're not directly controlling one guardian out of your 4 anymore doesn't mean like there's any less actual skill involved in the gameplay itself. Like, the skill type changes. So like, you're still making all those very strategic decisions. You're looking at, what is this dungeon going to throw at me? What are the power requirements? What are the level requirements? What are the rewards that are going to come out of this? And because of the way the roguelike dungeon crawling works, where you're like picking room by room by room your path through the dungeon, you're like making decisions like, I need iron ore because I need this to craft my next thing. I'm going to pick rooms that give me iron ore and the enemies that drop iron ore. So you're picking your team, you're swapping out heroes in between rooms so that you can like adjust to the difficulty and all that stuff along the way. And yeah, you're fighting your way through the enemies. In terms of active participation in the combat itself, obviously a lot less because it's no longer ARPG, as I mentioned earlier. It's more auto battle-y, but we are definitely still exploring areas where, like, just kind of like it was near the end there for Guild of Guardians in our last like couple of playtests, where we experimented with auto combat, where you can manually control the abilities of your party members, and that's still a thing as well.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Josiah. So the next question is, could you detail the roguelike elements in Guild of Guardian? What specific mechanics are implemented that follow this genre, such as permadeath or procedural generation? Andrew, I think you have a great insight to this one.
Yeah, so that was one of our design challenges. Like, how do we take these traditional card battlers and make it more like a Roblox or more like a roguelike? And so, for example, you look at something like an AFK or a lot of these games, you jump into a level and the level's quite short. You finish it in a couple minutes, and so that we've kind of redesigned it so in any given world or let's say that like you say, hey, I'm gonna play world 1, and then there's maybe instead of there being 30 to 100 levels, there's only 4 levels, 4 dungeons, sorry. But then each dungeon might have 30 rooms within it, so one room will correspond to be like or one room will basically be like between half to like one level of like an AFK arena sort of style of game. And so a dungeon then is significantly longer than like a traditional like short kind of AFK arena style thing. And then on top of it, you have endless mode, and that will be more like a pure roguelike where it literally is endless. You battle until every single hero has been knocked down, and then you're knocked out. And when the heroes are die, they're out for the rest of that run, right? And when the run's over, they'll be and you leave the dungeon, they'll get their health back, and you'll be able to play again with them. But again, when they're knocked out in any given run, they're kind of out for that run. On top of it, there's a lot of procedural generation mechanics. So we have like the enemies and the meta are different every run that you do it. The players, when they finish a room, they have a choice between a handful of other rooms, and those rooms have randomization attached to them, and then also prizes are randomized. And so, but where it's different than like a roguelike is, for the story dungeons, they are beatable, right? Like in the most hardcore roguelike, like you just play until you lose, or you play until you beat the game, like in Hades, for example. Whereas like for this, we've designed this so when you come into World 1, you can beat Dungeon 1 like within, a reasonable amount of time, and then you move on to Dungeon 2. And so there is like a beat it and kind of progress to the next level, which a lot of like, if you look at a lot of the mobile roguelikes, this is like pretty common in them, but it's, a little different than the traditional roguelike.
Yep. Again, it comes back down to that endless mode again, and I think a lot of people are going to be excited to see how that unravels. Thanks for that, Andrew. So the next question is, what kind of characters and squad customization options are available to players in Guild of Guardian? Can we expect to see any form of character or squad progression as players advance in the game? Mr. Josiah.
Yes. Hello. Yeah, character customization, squad customization, progression alongside of that. It's safe to say that everybody here agrees that the way you start the game, if the same level of customization and the same level of player options that are available to you from minute 1 are the same at hour 60, then we failed at some point in like visualizing and exercising that level of progression, for players, demonstrating that to players over time in the game. So in terms of like starting out with the squad max size of like 2 or 3 and working your way up to 5, or backup squad slots from 10 to 20, or whatever we want to do, like there's a bunch of options for us to make sure that that is actually being demonstrated to players as the further you get into the game. Yeah, equipment slots, artifact slots, all that stuff. Like it's a lot of the things that you were familiar with in the past version of the game are there, and extra stuff has been added on top of that as well to help diversify and even expand upon the strategic and tactical decisions you make in the gameplay.
I think a good follow-up question on that, Josiah, is could you share some of the most significant challenges you faced during the development process of Guild of Guardian? I'm assuming that's probably going to be like the latest current version.
Yeah.
And any notable achievements that you're particularly proud of?
So on the challenges side of things, it would be unsurprising to say that, of course, the number one thing that we always find ourselves coming back to and double checking and triple checking and doing tons of due diligence work is on the economic sustainability front. Like making sure that everything that has Web3 connection in terms of fungible tokens, non-fungible tokens, social features, or anything like that, is not creating an ecosystem where we can accidentally oversupply or under demand the resource or the outlets of those systems. So we've expanded our economy team. We've brought more people onto the team to give more eyes onto it. And with the help of Mineloader, who has tons and tons of years of experience working on Web2 versions of mobile RPG economies, we're set up to merge those two expertise levels and create something amazing. So that's of course our biggest challenge, but more than ever, I think we're set up for success. Achievements wise, and this is a testament to Friday and the Mindloader team, is that within 8 weeks of us bringing these guys on to the team to help us start working on this new version of Guild of Guardians, they had a playable demo for us ready. We had it in our hands. We were playing the new version. Assets from the old Guild Guardians were in there. We were seeing the new mechanics, seeing the new features, and already being able to formulate a more clear vision of how this was going to work in the near future. So, as I said before, it's a testament to their skill and capability that I think things are looking really bright for this new version of Guild.
Yeah, and that's all them. I didn't code anything, but I happy to be helping.
I'm sure. I'm not a coder myself, but I'm sure that we all have a great inputs into things, right? So yeah, thanks for that, Josiah. I think it's really interesting and a great insight to see what are the actual challenges during development and also the achievements, right, on the flip side as well. And I think I want to kind of bring that question to yourself as well, Andrew and Clay. What have you guys felt like are the most significant challenges you've faced during the short development period that we've had? And also on a more wholesome note, the more notable achievements that you've faced as well. If you want to start with you, maybe, Clay?
So I'm actually going to flip through that just because I want to speak to it because I saw it coming up in chat and I don't want to just dodge. But when it comes to refunds, I'm not a lawyer, but our sales are conducted with terms and conditions, and you can get your answer in those terms and conditions. Games and developments have features which can change during development, and what we're trying to focus on today is being as clear as possible with what's happening with Guild of Guardians and the future roadmap. Now, we are confident that when the community sees the results of these changes, that why we made them will be apparent. Of course, getting it to the point where you can actually play it takes time, but we will get there.
Yeah, and just to
now that I've got that out of my head, I'm happy to take the question again.
Well, speaking of challenges, one thing that's challenged us sometimes is, make the IMX team has kind of come back to us saying, well, hey guys, we made a commitment to do X, Y, Z, so we need to rethink this design. And I think it's been a bit of a challenge in the development, but again, it's they are doing their best to they have a list of hey, here's all the things that we did, and if we're gonna change anything, there's a lot of discussion and we have to push sometimes to be hey, to make the game work, we need to do this, and so it's been a lot of back and forth to make sure we're really balancing what's been promised.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Claire, I don't know if you ended up giving an answer to the question. Did you have any thoughts on that, or did I miss that?
I mean, yeah, it's hard because I was trying to hold the chat question in my head, but when it comes to this whole process, I do think one of the most challenging steps was actually the search for the new partner. That was a whole lot of design work on our end to be clear of what we wanted to do with the core loop. It was going out and searching and sourcing potential partners who had teams available to move on to it quickly. getting in touch with people like Andrew Friday and working with the Mindloader team on due diligence to see if we could make this happen on the timelines we wanted to. It was really quite intense. And getting through that and getting to actually start working on practical development, it's moved really rapidly. And that has made it more exciting and easier. Now it's just going through the game development process where you have a core idea and plan of how these core loops are going to work. You do that initial system implementation, and one of the things I love about Mindloader is we get those things in, and we test them and we play them, we see how they work, and then we change, we iterate and we move forward. And this is the most fun part of the process for me, and what I love about working with Mindloader is as I'm getting the new updates in the build, like it's just seeing that market progress with each update, which helps with my heartburn and confidence quite a bit.
And yeah, in terms of other things like good progress, I'm pretty happy with some of the adjustments to the art style. I think that like Mindloader is quite strong on the art side, and so there's been like some work with like updating the shaders so the characters like bright or pop a little bit more. So I've really enjoyed seeing all the work that the 3D artists, the animators, and the technical artists have done.
Yeah, 100%. That's one of my personal favorites as well in terms of, the visuals, especially like on a mobile game. It's kind of hard to kind of create something that actually catches your eye and attention. And I know Mindloader's strength is actually on that visual and art side. So I think as they have a bit more time to actually develop, and improve the art style, we're going to see some incredible stuff. So the next question.
Yeah, and one more thing on the challenges, and I think of it, it's kind of like it's a challenge and an opportunity, right? Like the biggest challenge on our end from the Mindloader side has been like balancing like Web 2 and Web 3, right? Like how do you make the game super fun and appealing to a lot of people, but then also retaining the value of Web 3 and sticking with the Web 3 ethos as much as possible. And I think like it is a challenge, but it's also like it's an opportunity, right? If we make a really fun mobile game that a lot of people can play, and you don't have to be like a mega dungeon to jump in and play, but you can be kind of anybody. I think that's like a huge opportunity, right? Like we have something like 1 million pre-registrations or something. Like, a lot of people have pre-registered, and it's like, how do we make it super easy for them to just jump in and play the game, and how do we make it easy for the next million people who are just on the App Store scrolling and click on it, and just make sure that they can jump in and have fun, out of the gate. And then a couple days, weeks later, they're like, oh, wait, like I just got an NFT. I didn't even know that was an NFT. How do I like learn more about that? And I think like, again, it's a balance. And it's been a challenge on our end, but I think that, like I said, it's an opportunity for us to like address a larger market.
Really interesting point you make there. I think it's something a lot of Web3 games actually face, the problem of how, like, the actual friction in terms of, creating a wallet, and that's something Riddle's kind of trying to solve with Passport. And yeah, I think that's kind of the question, right? Like, how do we get to a stage that people actually are playing a game where they don't even realize it's like a, quote unquote blockchain game, and then they do end up getting an NFT, and it's kind of like, the gateway drug, if you kind of want to call it that, into the blockchain space, and actually kind of starting to be open to it. And I completely agree. I think that's exactly how it's going to go down. People are going to start realizing that the game that they're playing, they won't even realize it. Sorry, and then when they do realize it, they're like, hey, it's not just pieces of art that sell for $100,000+ dollars. So yeah, thanks for that, Andrew. The next question is, when crafting, will there be chances to craft tiers of an item, like common, uncommon, rare, legendary, or mythic? Can there be a system to spend GOG token to re-roll your craft? Re-roll your craft for a chance at a higher tier, or be able to merge multiple low tiers for a higher tier? Josiah, I think this is something that is in your alley.
Yeah, this is like 6 questions in one question. We're gonna go through this one by one. When crafting, will there be chances to craft tiers in an item? In the current design and build that I'm playing right now, I believe each item is of a specific tier. So if you have a blueprint for a tier 2 sword, you craft a tier 2 sword. So like you know what tier of an item you're going to get when you're crafting it, in that case. There might be some deviations or variations to that, depending on the system. So like, I can go into more detail about that at a later date. There's a lot more questions in here. Like a common, uncommon, rare, mythic. Yep, we talked about that. Can there be a system to spend GOG tokens to re-roll? It's a good point. It's a good question. The economy team is always on the lookout for ways to add more utility to our blockchain assets. So who knows? We can toss that into the bucket, see what the team thinks about it. And merge lower tiers for higher tier. I think that right there accurately describes the entire merge loop of the game. So like there is a merge table in the game where the resources and rewards that you're getting in dungeons and the different types of dungeons are going into this merge table into your backpacks where you're collecting all this stuff. And when you come out of these dungeons, you're taking that stuff and you're merging them into different tiers, and those different tiers feed into individual blueprints for different items. Could be equipment, could be consumables, whatever. Could be extra resources for higher tier stuff as well. But like you're ultimately merging all of that stuff up into higher tier stuff for higher value items.
Awesome, thanks for that, Josiah. And yeah, I think that was like 6 questions rolled into one. I think when I was reading that out, I was like, oh, it's like pretty much reading out a new question each line. So the next question is, under the hero stats, it shows God level. Can you talk to us more about what this is? And I think I do want to preface here that I think, like a lot of things actually currently, like the designs aren't always finalized. So keep in mind that this is all like a work in progress. And I think that's the nature of coming on to AMAs and talking about where the development's at. Things aren't always finalized in terms of design and everything like that. But Josiah, if you have any light to shed there.
Yeah, for sure. So like Andrew was talking about earlier about what carries over between trades, like levels being reset, stuff like that. We're very aware of the fact, we've been aware for a while. I've had discussions with a lot of you actually about this specific topic of like what should carry over between trades, like what sets of metadata stay on that chain and carry over in between trades. So when you see things like God level, those are us investigating ideas, not saying God level will be in the game or that it's approved or confirmed or anything like that, but that's us investigating ideas for stats that could go on guardians or equipment or pets or whatever, all the different stuff that we had that can be traded. That's us investigating ideas from metadata that can be influenced and traded and carry over and not reset.
Awesome. Sorry, I was being a bit of a Dragon Ball Z fanboy there in the chat. Next question is esports. So with in regards to esports potential, is there any consideration or plans for Guild of Guardian to be competitive on a professional level? How do you envision the esports scene for your game? Claire, I think this question is ideal for you.
So yeah, when it comes to competition within Guild of Guardians, obviously the initial thing we've talked about is leaderboards and extending that into PvP beyond. I think there is a point of confusion around esports in terms of our integration with the esports team. The goal there was to bring the esports characters to life within the world of Guild of Guardians and give them life and representation. It wasn't to create a thriving esports scene. And esports is tricky. And I got a ton of experience here, particularly from my time at Wizards. When it comes to the Guild of Guardians universe, I can absolutely see some game types that could lead to a thriving competitive esports scene. But I don't see a competitive esports scene for Guild of Guardians. Competition, yes. But an esports scene itself, where you're watching people in a stadium play, not so much. Just for clarity.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for a game like Guild of Guardians and how it is now. Next question is, sorry, I'm trying to post these in the chat as I go as well. 1 second. Could you share how the integration of blockchain technology impacts the gameplay in Guild of Guardians? Is it essential for players to have an understanding of blockchain tech to fully enjoy the game?
Absolutely not. That's always been our goal. That's been our goal from day one, like pre-production stages of Guild of Guardians, of like, we want to make something that can attract tons of people, and we're all Web3 familiar natives here, and we all understand that sometimes setting up a wallet can, if you show that to somebody who has no idea what that stuff means, sometimes they just put the phone down, walk away from the computer, whatever it is. It's just too complicated for them. And so a huge part of our development effort, our design, all of our investigations, our research goes into making sure that we obfuscate the parts that are not necessary for you to play the game, but are necessary for you to be secure and safe, and you can engage with all the mechanics. And we've surfaced the stuff that's necessary for you to make informed decisions. And like Clay was saying earlier about the balance and finding the right sweet spot between like what is too much information, what is not enough information. That's exactly what we're doing. We spend every day thinking about that.
Yeah, it's really interesting we actually got that question. My assumption was always that people would think that for a game like us that we're trying to get mass adoption, that we'd kind of understand that to fully enjoy the game, you'd actually want little to or more like no understanding of blockchain tech required. Like that's just like the underlying of the game, like what it's like built upon, right? Where the actual focus is the game itself. And then it makes me think like maybe mainstream people who still might have like a stigma towards blockchain games, they might think like if that's something that they think or that's a narrative, I think a game like us, like Guild of Guardians, when we actually build it out and you know everything is actually under the hood in terms of blockchain, that's definitely going to start to shift the narrative like we were kind of talking about with Andrew earlier, where it's like, hey, you're playing this game and you don't even realize that you just got an NFT once you're like a week in or something, and that funnel is going to kind of open it up. So yeah, it's a really interesting question to see, to be honest. So thanks for that. The next question is, how many
Well, like
games...
just to add color there, I think it's an interesting look at just the spectrum of different types of players. Where you've got Guardian, who really cares about the mint number of the NFTs. My hypothesis here is for a lot of mainstream gamers, they don't really even care that it is an NFT. What they'll care about is that the systems we have in place that build upon blockchain technology allow them to solve challenges they've got in the game themselves in ways that they can't necessarily in other products without open ecosystems. And what the majority of players, I believe, will look for is how those systems meet their needs. And that's that bridge between, on one end, you've got people who really understand the technology and some of those finer points, like mint number. But what we need to do to really hit that mainstream side of things is appeal to a much broader spectrum of people and really look at how the technology is meeting their needs rather than just be excited about the technology itself. And it's a road to get there. But when we do, I believe that's what takes us into the breakout blockchain game experience, because it isn't necessarily about blockchain anymore at that point. It is about what the ecosystem can do.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's more about what can the actual utility or experience that the blockchain is bringing to the game, rather than actually understanding the tech stack. It's more about how can it actually benefit and improve an existing game. So yeah, thanks for that, Clay, to actually draw that distinction there. Yeah, really interesting topic. I'm sure we could talk about it for ages. So the next question is, how many game modes do you plan to have upon release in Q4? And can you name them, Josiah? Putting you on the spot there.
Yeah, and Andrew can probably provide a little bit more detail about these as well. But we have story mode, which unlike the original Guild of Guardians, we actually plan to go a lot further with our narrative in terms of characters, conflict, resolutions, the whole narrative arcs as well, explorable backgrounds between characters. The synergy system that we had before has evolved into like this new bond system, where we're talking about expanding further on the individual like passives that players can or guardians share between one another. All that stuff leveling up as well. So there's a lot more exploration going on into the story mode and its associated systems. And we also have, I think that was mentioned earlier, endless mode with the leaderboard systems. This is like, the intention here is that as you're going in between these story missions, during the downtime, like if you don't meet the requirements for the next story mission, you go to the endless dungeon to explore and grind and look for new things and look for new rewards and secrets and level up your characters in between. And the further you progress in the story, the more stuff you unlock or becomes available for you to witness or encounter in the endless dungeon mode.
Yeah, and also for the story mode levels, like with a lot of these games, there's going to be like once you've beaten it, there you unlock like a harder version of it, of the level, of the dungeon. Sorry, so that even the story modes will be replayable, and you'll get better gear, better drops if you can beat it at the harder level. So again, that just adds more replayability to the existing story mode gameplay.
Yeah,
And then just
Sorry,
like
go ahead.
one other thing that hasn't really been mentioned too much, it's a kind of an unsung hero in the whole like live ops process, is like there's a whole like player management system that will let us update the meta, like refresh it pretty seamlessly. And that's some technology that Mindloader's had for the last they've developed in the past that we're going to be using, and it's just again kind of important to be able to refresh the game meta pretty regularly.
Yeah, that's a good point actually. Like the management aspect has definitely been expanded as we focus more on like strategic decisions in this version of Guild of Guardians. Like we mentioned the merge system earlier. Like when we were thinking about how to make Guild of Guardians better, like we thought about it in two different core loops, like the roguelike loop of dungeon crawling and exploring randomized dungeons and randomized rooms, and then the merge loop, which is all about taking the results of that roguelike loop, the rewards, and creating better items, crafting, managing your inventory, and making sure that you can build stuff so that when you go back into the roguelike loop, you do better next time. And they feed into one another and create like a larger, more high-level loop. And so yeah, I don't want to de-emphasize the importance of the merge mode as well.
There's a lot to unpack there, and I'm sure that we're going to get more information on that as time goes on. And on a side note, I'm especially excited for the story mode because I know, Clay, you mentioned that there's going to be cinematics that come with that. So that's going to be super interesting to see how that's going to pan out. So the next question is, will there be skins or cosmetics, or will there be items that change the appearance of Guardians?
Currently, no. We had cosmetics in this stuff on our to-do list, but when we were building our roadmap to make sure we could get this into your hands as soon as possible, we had to make some cuts, and cosmetics was put into the backlog. But we will definitely circle back around to it in the future because I think everybody in the studio loves cosmetics.
Yeah, 100%. I think if we just look at Fortnite and see just how much people buy things like cosmetics there, I think it's an understatement to say how much people enjoy it. So I think there's a follow-up as well. So I understand that rarities such as Warrior, Elite, and Mythic were solely cosmetic in the past. But since the game's visuals have changed, are there any plans to incorporate more utility outside of just visual cosmetics?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, there's not a plan to add additional gameplay functionality to them. It is sticking to that original cosmetic differentiation. But as with so many things, I would put this in the plausible space in the time post-launch to look at. So how do I put this? one of the things that I've been looking at when it comes to the overall Guild of Guardians ecosystem is what are the ingredients we have for recipes, and essentially one of the really powerful elements of open economies like this is any NFT has the potential to add unique qualities and properties to a recipe. So within utility themselves, like saying like, hey, you've got the mythic Leah, it is 2x power, definitely not looking there. But when it comes to other opportunities to leverage those NFTs, definitely in the possibility space that we're looking to create.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Clay. The next question is, when is it planned to publish a full description of the game with all the mechanics down to the smallest detail? I think that's referring to the white paper, Josiah.
Yep. There's a new white paper very soon to be dropped. It's got to undergo some final legal review, of course. We've been working on it in the background. It's got, last I checked, there's like 10 different people in there editing it simultaneously. So it's coming around the corner very soon, I would say. So keep an eye out. Wait for that update from somebody here on the team to let you know. In terms of how detailed it will be, it'll be fairly detailed. It won't contain everything, but it'll give you a very good grasp of what our intentions are with the MVP and the releases this year for Guild of Guardians. So, yeah, give it an eye out.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. Last time you checked, there's like 10 people editing in there. I think that's like the behind the scenes and immutable, right? Like working in like such a fast paced organization that's obviously edge of the new age technology type of work as well. Yeah, it gets pretty chaotic, so that kind of made me laugh. So the next question is, I noticed that
sorry, I was looking for a part to hop in there. Just
sure.
For total clarity, when it comes to mechanics, and details, you do need to read the white paper and the plan at a high level with the lens of this is the plan, and plans may change. When it comes to the detail of these systems, we are putting together the best designs that we can with our team's time and expertise. And as we implement those systems and we do our internal testing, we learn things. As we go through alphas and betas, we learn things. And that will lead to changes. So just be absolutely crystal clear that even if we're detailing it down to the smallest detail that we can, those can change. And they will change if we believe it's to the benefit of the Guild of Guardians ecosystem and game.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that question said detail to the last, drop, which I think is quite difficult to do, especially right now when we're in the new development phase. Although we're making very rapid progress, there are so many things I can only begin to imagine that you guys are chopping and changing all the time in different variables. The next question is, I noticed some. So let me just pop this into the chat as well. I noticed that some items are listed as NFTs that are tradable. Are there any game resources tradable as SFTs? Josiah. And if you also want to let us know what SFTs are, I know you guys were talking about it amongst yourselves earlier. It's actually the first time I've actually heard of SFTs. Maybe I'm becoming a boomer in the space, but it's always changing, isn't it?
Yeah, Andrew, do you want to take this one?
Yeah. I'm gonna jump in a minute and walk to the train, but yeah, definitely I can jump in. Yeah. So, SFT are like semi fungible tokens. So it's kind of like, let's say you have like a sword and there's 1,000 of them and they all look the same. Some people call those SFT, but they are actually like technically NFT. Usually they just look the same. They have the same characteristics, and so I think like a lot of the NFT in the game, some people might consider them SFT, especially if you consider that when I sell a character, its stats will like its level will be reset, and I'll get the refund of the XP, of some of the XP and of the gold that I put in to do it. So when on the point of sale, the NFTs themselves will be they'll be similar, though they'll technically have like a different kind of like serial number, but outside of that, they'll be roughly the same. So I'm not even a huge fan of the SFT concept, like, because they are NFT, but some people like they want to differentiate between like the 10,000 PFP and like an in-game item and kind of use a different term.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So SFT is an NFT, but it's just kind of like a new terminology just to differentiate between like an in-game asset versus, you know, like a picture of an ape. That makes a lot of sense.
Well, as for whether or not are there any other resources that are going to be tradable on that side? So, I don't think we have a full list of like what will be tradable, what will not be tradable, especially from the economy team's point of view, because it feels like their their list of currencies and their giant flow charts of where things come from and where they go, that changes quite often as the features are iterated upon to adjust or account for like new problem statements that come up out of nowhere. But like it's safe to say that like all of the NFT types that have been pitched to you in the past, pets, guild tokens, guardians, equipment, all that stuff, like if those should be tradable.
Thanks, Josiah, for shedding some light into that question. And I think Andrew had to drop off there because I think he's catching a train. Hopefully he can join us back soon. So I think I also want to address Kerber's question real quick as well. Can you share any details about the new staking system? I know this is a bit separate to the game design question, but relatively quick to tackle. I think the main point here is that active staking is continuing how it is, and the next season 2 is going to begin next week on June 5th, I believe, and there's going to be a new Medium article regarding that soon. And in terms of NFT staking, there's also going to be more information on that dropping, so keep your eyes peeled. So the next question is, given that Guild of Guardian offers play-to-earn mechanics, how are you ensuring a balanced and fair gaming environment? What measures are in place to prevent potential abuse of the system? And I think this might be similar to like a question we addressed last AMA, where it's like, what are we going to be doing to mitigate bots? But I'm sure there's more risk out there as well. So Clay or Josiah, if one of you guys want to kick this question off.
Sure, I can hop in. So, like, I had answered this previously in that, abuse from players of the system, I'm not particularly concerned about at the moment. But it's abuse by bots. So people who aren't actually playing, who are trying to circumvent systems by having hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of accounts to gather rewards with the ultimate goal of sort of extracting value out of the ecosystem. And there are multiple angles of attack here, from using additional AI level detection to notice patterns quickly so that we can eliminate bots from the ecosystem before they have that potential to extract value out. But that's also balanced out with a need to guide players through this journey from Web2 gaming, from free-to-play gaming, to getting into the blockchain ecosystem. So this is where admission happens through leaderboards and likely tutorials, and it's going to be a balance, and it's something that I think will lead to iteration in live, because it's an ever-escalating conflict of if the system can be abused, players will find a way to do it, and when they do, it's incumbent on us to have systems in place that minimize the potential damage, and I think we've gotten far better at that over time. So that we can then respond to it and eliminate that path of abuse. And then, they will move on to the next. This is also a tricky one, because when it comes to a lot of those systems, the more that we talk in detail about how they work, the easier it is to circumvent them. So that is one. Well, I will not go into the smallest level of detail about exactly how we're fighting, but we are active in that battle.
Thanks, Clay. I think that instills a lot of confidence into people, and knowing that it's something we're acknowledging, and also putting a lot of time and energy into making sure is effective / efficient. So mindful of time, I know we have like about 5-6 minutes left, so we have 3 last questions here, and then we have to wrap it up as unfortunately we have to get back to work. So the next question is, well, not unfortunately, fortunately, but you know what I mean, for the AMA. So the next question, I think Andrew, welcome back as well. I know you're back on stage with us. I want to throw a nice question to you. So how many people are actually working on Guild of Guardians from the Mindloader studio?
Yeah, I was trying to pull the most recent Google sheet. So I don't have like the exact number, but it's between, I want to say 35 and 40. Bring on a few more artists, because now that we're like in the getting ready for production sort of phase, we want a bunch more art, all the enemies that we're going to need. So I think we're going to add a decent number of artists as we start boosting out more content.
Yeah, no worries. And I know that you're outside at the moment, so it's kind of hard to pick up your audio, but I think you said something about 35, maybe to 40 or so people working on the game. And I think you mentioned something about art as well.
Yes, yeah, sorry. I'm out in San Francisco now. It's a game nearby, so
Yeah, no problem at all.
it's around 30, 35, 40. And we're bringing on some additional.
Yeah, no worries.
No worries, Andrew.
Yeah, we're trying our best out here, but I think we got the main gist of the question. So it's around 35 to 40 people, and I think art is a big focus on the game at the moment as well, and we're going to bring on more people if needed, where needed.
I do want to tackle one from chat.
Sure.
Reem thinks that we want as many bots as possible to show VC investors that the game is great and get more funds. And it couldn't be further from the truth. And why I can say that with confidence is if all I wanted to do was blow smoke, we could have spent this AMA in a very different light. We could have made all sorts of promises rather than having hard discussions on where things are actually at and what we're actually trying to do. It is a lot easier to make empty promises. It's a lot harder to buckle down and talk about where things are actually at. And that has always been my approach. I'd rather have the hard conversation and talk about where things truly are, because that's how you ship games and that's how you get viable products. When you spend your time on smoke and mirrors, it leads to frustrating situations, and that is not where I want to take this at all.
Awesome. Thanks for stamping down on that question, Clay. I think it's really important to communicate to people that this isn't just going to be smoke and mirrors, and there's actually something being built here. And this is pretty much what the AMA is for, right? To actually be transparent about where the development is and actually take, 30 plus questions from the community as we go. So the final 2 questions here are, what plans do you have for post-launch support? Can we expect regular updates, new content releases, or balance patches? So this kind of relates to live ops. Josiah or Clay, whoever wants to take this one.
Yeah, at a high level, we've already talked about this a lot. There's a laser focus right now on the plan to get us to launch in 2023. And if Andrew wasn't breaking up, we are working with Mindloader on the 2024 plan into 2025 as well, because we need to coordinate with Mindloader on what those additional updates to core game systems as we roll out additional elements in live, and then how live operation support is going to work as well. But it is definitely taking shape. 2024 depends on us executing on 2023. So it is also ever changing and adjusting based on where we're at today. But the goal is, a multi-pronged attack post-launch. So on one end, one of the reasons we went with Mindloader is their ability to run these live operations with their tooling effectively, and that's something that we're going to be putting in effort into internal to Immutable for Guild of Guardians, making sure the meta stays fresh, that we're introducing new content across the systems, that we're running the leaderboards, and we're iterating and optimizing on those and the challenges faced. And with those releases, having those new systems come online, which extend and flesh out the game, that is one of the keys to the lifeblood of any of these mobile products. It's not just those systems you launch with, but I think everyone's seen those additional elements of gameplay, additional content, additional challenges that come online in live, and we're absolutely looking to do that.
Was there anything else you wanted to add to that, Josiah, or do you think Clay had this covered pretty well?
I covered it pretty well. Like Mindloader is locked and ready to go. Like they have the experience, they have the games, they have the track record to make this work, and there's a lot of people already thinking about what the next year is going to cover.
Yeah, and I think I just want to reiterate something that we also talked about earlier, which is that whatever's coming out at the end of this year, this is just the beginning, right? Like, it's going to be the MVP. There's going to be so many things in the pipelines, and I think that's the point that we really want to drive home to people, that whatever you get at the end of the year, it's not going to be like a finished product, right? And it's just going to be there's going to be a lot of updates as we go, and a lot of things planned as well. So in the last question that we have time for today, can you shed some light on the security measures Guild of Guardians has in place for blockchain transactions and player data protection? It's a nice and fun question, right? For us to finish off with. If you want to take that, Claire.
Yeah. So I make games, and having those games be secure is really important to me. Security is a central pillar of the Immutable platform. Keeping user data safe, keeping transactions safe, and providing people participating in the ecosystem with as much information as they can have to make educated transactions. This is also one of those tricky ones where the more we go into exact detail of all of the security we have in place, the easier it can be for bad actors to crack it. TLDR, this is an ever-escalating battle as well. Attacks are happening all the time across the ecosystem. We've learned a lot from others' mistakes when it comes to security, and the Immutable X platform has been quite secure for us across tens of millions of transactions. If this is something that players really want more insight into, it's one where I would bring potentially our head of security on to talk more about it in detail, because he's going to be able to answer this question so much better than I can, beyond the flowery language of being like, yes, this is super important, and it's something we're continually investing in.
Yeah, I think it speaks volumes when you guys are just a game design team that kind of came on today, but the amount of questions and variables that actually goes into the process. There's also so many other things like back-end security when it comes to things like the blockchain, right? So it's kind of a crazy operation when you kind of think about it. I think that kind of wraps it up today, guys. I think we try to go through as many community questions that we got asked in that AMA channel. So thanks everyone for tuning in today and asking all those questions. And Clay and Josiah, also, many thanks to you guys actually coming on and taking the time and energy to actually answer all these questions as sincerely as possible. And of course, Andrew, who unfortunately I think is catching a train in a very loud place at the moment. A big shout out to him to actually come on and talk to the community. So we really appreciate that as well, Andrew. I think, Clay, before we wrap it up, I think the future, whenever the next AMA is, I know people ask, they really love the presentation that we had last AMA, and I know that's not something we can bring every time to the table because it does take some time away to actually create them, but I think we do appreciate that the community does enjoy them. So
yeah, I dropped it into chat.
I
definitely,
saw that.
Definitely doing something around Beautiful Corner, doing an update after the next Mineloader visit in July, because a lot of work, particularly around the economy, will come out of that. Happy to do more. I do have to go, though. I am late for my next call. But thank you, everybody. We'll catch you again soon.
Thank you. I think that's what I was... Yeah, go ahead, Clay. I think that's what I was leading to decide. I was like, everyone wants to know when more presentations, because it is quite fun, actually, to look at those.
It's always nice to
Thanks a
share
lot,
some
Josiah.
stuff. Yeah,
Awesome.
of course. It's been a while, so it's nice to see some familiar names down there at the bottom.
Yeah, it's been a
while.
minute since you came on an AMA, Josiah.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people, they still recognize that amazing voice of yours.
Yeah,
A lot of OGs.
This is my post-COVID voice. I got COVID when I went to Australia and got back from Australia and immediately just had to lay down in bed with a fever. So, like, I'm still recovering.
We're not doing our tourism any favors there, Josiah. I can't. We're really scaring off people with our animals now. It's like,
Don't go to Australia is the tip. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, guys. I know it's really late for some of you guys there, so get some sleep. And we appreciate everyone taking the time to listen to us today. So thanks, everyone.
Adios.
Awesome. See ya.